When you hear the name Tiandi, what single word comes to mind? There's probably multiple answers, but I bet I can name all of them off the top of my head. You ready? Here goes. Loud, annoying, or that one song we all know and maybe not love because, yeah. The point is, none of these are positive remarks. Tiandi can be a very, 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 very annoying hero if played right, or the easiest kill of your life. There is no in between. Even his voice lines can cause physical mental damage, especially female Tiandis, which I play solely on the purpose of two things. One, I think the armor just looks a little better and nicer, and two, the voice lines are so much louder, longer, and high-pitched, and extremely annoying. Before the video truly begins, I just want to take a quick break and say if you're coming back on the regular or are new and like what you're watching, consider subscribing. Helps me out a ton and it's completely free. Anyways, back to the video. Tiandi was released on October 16th, 2018, being the vanguard and basically the face of the Lin faction. Which I find awfully funny because on his release, when the devs were revealing Tiandi, they straight up butchered his name. Here, take a quick listen.
New heroes?
We have 4 new heroes. The first one is the Tiandi.
But every other Lin brought all new toys to the table that were their fighting mechanics. JJ had his Shifu stance that regen stamina and was the only stance able to be used out of stamina. Nusha had her trap mechanic that was instantly butchered by the entire For Honor community. Shaolin had his key stance with 4 different moves only available in his key stance, and Tiandi was For Honor's first and only dodge specialist. Tiandi's gimmick that he brought to the table was that he had a dodge attack that would circle your opponent, dodging any moves thrown at it if they were impatient. What this dodge attack had from other dodge attacks was the special ability to not only feint it, but also soft feint it into any other dodge attack, both dodge light and dodge heavy. As you can tell, the dodge light attacks were extremely slow and clunky in animation, almost looking like Tiandi was having an epileptic seizure while he was swinging it. Looking at the next move they showed off was Tiandi's Palm Strike. Now, if you didn't realize this, because you didn't play till 2022, Tiandi's Dodge Bash was indeed a neutral bash, basically the first of its kind. The only people that have neutral bashes were Gladiator with his own attack and Highlander with his kick and offensive stance. But in reality, I regard Tiandi as the first ever hero to have a normal neutral bash. The next unique move on the chopping block was his Dragon's Kick, and this move was like a double-edged sword. Dragon's Kick was a finisher bash that could not be guard broken at all and could be soft feinted into all dodge attacks. Now that sounds fantastic, right? A finisher bash that can't be punished unless the hero had a dodge attack, that also had soft feint properties on top of it. Well, there's the kicker. If you wanted to do the kick, there was no punish guaranteed from you unless the opponent was near a wall. So basically 90% of the time, the only right option you could do as Tiandi would be soft feint that kick into one of the dodge attacks. But guess what? Your opponent knew that too, so you'd have to play mind games and basically your Dragon's Kick was kinda useless. And that was basically it for Tiandi. He was the dodge specialist with no fantastic openers, a bash undodgeable 50-50, and honestly some really high damage with 30 damage heavy openers and 40 damage heavy finishers. Obviously there was more moves in his kit like his dodge forward heavy and zone, but there's no need to talk about them right now. For a while, Tiandi and the rest of the Lin faction would receive more hate than some poor guy's tier list on the For Honor Reddit page, mainly for how different they were playing from everyone else. They had way more options than the average hero back in 2018. Most common complaint I always heard was that they felt more like Mortal Kombat characters than For Honor characters, where instead of reacting to someone's offense, you had to continuously predict the outcome of what move would hit you. The biggest culprit of this was Tiandi's chain lights. These were 400 MS just like the counterpart in today's game. Keep in mind that all heroes discarding assassins back then had 600 MS lights in 2018. So just imagine being used to normal light attacks at 600 MS and then randomly seeing a flash of a mid-chain light almost twice as fast. Now imagine seeing that 10 times in a row because it worked 3 times in a row and they weren't anything to scoff at, being 14 damage light attacks. While the whole stigma against the Lin faction did exist, it did not last. While sure, everyone was in agreement that these heroes were different and really good on release, months after, it got to a certain time where every other hero started to fall off, other than JJ and Nusha. JJ climbed in popularity, and Nusha just sucked to begin with, so she kept sucking. But the other heroes deemed really overpowered, being Tiandi and Shaolin, fell off without a single nerf to their kits. This was one of the many examples of a hero not actually being broken and just being a learning curve. But what I've learned from this community is that it's easier to bitch and moan than it is to learn. Not only did people learn how to fight these heroes, but the actual DLC heroes after that, which showed the For Honor community what overpowered actually looked like. Say hello to Black Prior, For Honor's strongest knight in the game, bar none. And then right after that came Hitakiri, a hero was so simple, so easy, that you can disregard half of her mechanics and still win fights effectively pretty easily. Every Lin hero would go through changes. Well, again, excluding Nusha. And all of the Lin have dedicated videos on them, so if you want to check them out, be sure to do that. Tiandi would see no visible changes until the CCU, which basically took his only good option away from him, and that was his damage. Tiandi, as the dev stated, was a hard-hitting dodge specialist, and all of his moves reflected that damage, but then the CCU came around and took that all away from him. This led to an extremely defensive playstyle where Tiandis really wouldn't dare to attack first. Even with something like a neutral bash, they still felt like they needed to turtle up in fights, seeing as most of their attacks just tickled their opponents now. It wouldn't be until September 13th, 2022, where Tiandi and Valkyrie, two heroes that immensely struggled with their offense, would see any changes. Again, Valkyrie has already been covered, so if you wanted to see that, go watch it. But for now, we're gonna just talk about Tiandi. In the dev comments, they said that Tiandi was a very good character when it came to his defense, but lacked any good offense, which I guess was kinda true. Tiandi mains would take the whole dodge specialist thing and run with it for their entire lifespan. Nevertheless, back to the actual rework. They would give him dodge recoveries on all attacks in his kit. Beforehand, the only thing that would have dodge recoveries were his dodge attacks and dragon kick. This should be usefully paired with his dodge attack light crushing counter capabilities, where even now in today's game, Tiandi can quickly counter incoming dodge attacks with a well-timed dodge light. They would fully rework his bash. Nobody really liked the neutral bash for two reasons. It was a noob stomper in low tier, being that it can be done on the whim with not much tell to see the move like every other bash in the game, and the higher level it was pretty much an IQ test to see if your opponent was breathing, or used as a bash option select. If you don't believe me, this is the exact thing in the dev notes. I say, and I quote, "Palm Strike as a neutral attack did not work as an opener as intended. It was fully reactable at high level and being way too strong at low level. With the new input, it should be consistent with all other openers." So with this rework, Ubisoft would change it to a dodge forward bash, giving it the property of a 50-50, where your opponent needs to make a read if you're going to let it fly, or empty dodge forward and guard break. They would also remove his unique heavy palm strike follow-up and replace it with all of his chain finishers, so light chain ender and heavy chain ender. The reason for this change was the interaction this heavy caused. While after palm strike, the heavy opener would have armor activation around 300 ms into the move. This was not parryable if the bash landed, which led to confusion and had great tracking against dodge attacks, which was never intended for a hero like Tiandi. Moving on to Dragon's Kick. This move now had feintable properties, and as an added bonus, they gave it its very own unique follow-up. The dev stated that this was Tiandi's iconic move, which is completely wrong given the circumstances, but felt like the move was never performing to the standards they thought it was because it was fully reactable. They would also later remove the wall splat property since it now had a real punish. Moving on to Tiandi's actual iconic move, Dragon Dodge. The For Honor devs realized the move was a bit too slow to be used as a consistent way to counter-attack, normally getting blocked by the opponent or worse, parried. So in return, they lowered the time from 1100 ms to 800 ms. In return, they would remove the extended dodge properties it would have, or to put it in English, they reduced the feint window timing, so you could not feint it as late as you used to. The rest of his changes would just be quick little patches to make sure that the character was a lot more tone and fix any small bugs, for example, the guard break bug that he used to have. If you want to see the details, I'll leave the link below to the patch notes. And that was Tiandi's testing grounds. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure every single change I mentioned was implemented to the live game with no real changes made. So how is Tiandi now? Well, he was still a dodge specialist people enjoyed playing, but now even better than before. The dodge cancels made him flow extremely well without feeling as bullshit as, let's say, Pirate and Orochi's dodge cancels. Let's move on to Dragon's Kick. The buff to Dragon's Kick did wonders. Before, Dragon's Kick was just a glorified ledging tool or teamfight tool with Centurion with no confirmed follow-up. But with the feintable property it has now, it has turned into one of Tiandi's strongest mix-ups. Yet again, all because of dodge cancels. So on paper, this hero sounds really fucking broken, right? You're telling me he has an infinite chain bash on dodge for 50-50 that chains into itself, and a hyper armor at gap closer on top of it that can chain on miss. Then you also say his bash finisher is not only a good ledge tool, but has feintable properties, and on top of that, soft feints into all dodge cancels that have crushing counter capabilities. Their mid clear is insane, with the likes of their zone attack absolutely tearing through minions with ease. Well, buckle up, because this isn't really a problem because of one factor. His damage is some of the lowest in the game, if we forget about Zoe existing, because honestly I forget on the daily that this character exists. Those undodgeable lights I rave about? 10 damage. 10 damage. So if you want to kill someone with these lights, it would take around 13 to 15 attacks before we factor in any buffs, perks, and feats. What about that long wind-up hyper armor heavy meant to trade? 15 damage. Keep in mind, normal light attacks in this game are normally 14 damage-ish. It's not very much, but if you really think about it, this is how Tiandi needs to be to keep him balanced. Any other tweak to his damage could turn this hero into one of the biggest annoyances in the game. The only thing holding him back is this damage, and the fact that your opponent must die IRL from sensory overload with all the screaming Tiandi's doing before they actually die in game. But that's the thing, Tiandi's playstyle is not revolved around ending fights fast or to chunk enemies. It's to harass the fuck out of anyone, like how I harass women at night. And Tiandi's job is to make it feel like it's never your turn, unless you make a right read, and even then, there's still a good chance that the Tiandi can recover and punish you. You know, when you're sitting at your desk just chilling, watching something on your monitor and a fly shows up randomly while you're eating your food, and you smack it around and barely miss it. Then you think the fly's gonna take the hint and go somewhere else since you almost killed him with your fist. Well, he's back randomly floating around in your personal space and you just can't seem to hit him. That is exactly how Tiandi is supposed to be played. Pairing this whole unhittable playstyle is one of the most broken feat combos in the game. We've talked about how broken Indomitable can be on a hero like Pirate, pairing it with another feat called Thrilling Comeback, but that requires Revenge to be fully utilized. What if you could gain health by just landing attacks? Say hello to Life Leech and Indomitable. Tiandi's 3rd and 4th feat paired together is a match made in heaven. Not only shielding from all incoming damage for 25 seconds, but he now has the ability to heal back from non-critical health threshold to activate it once again. Enough about his moveset, and let's talk about why people really play For Honor, and that's fashion. Tiandi's fashion can be really good and really fucking awful at the same time. Where all of his gold trim armor looks really beautiful and pairs as well with his other gold trim armors, the other armor sets can leave a lot to be desired. And his emotes kinda suck balls, I'm not gonna lie. In his free roam emotes, they're just really stiff and there's no good emote spam. And the same thing can be said about his lock-on ones, but they're just not as stiff. Lastly, my favorite part about Tiandi, his executions. There's something I truly love about Tiandi's executions, and it's the fact that they resemble real in-game mechanics. Here's a couple examples. In Swallow's backspin, Tiandi goes to hit the opponent on his right side. The opponent goes to block it, and he feints a heavy onto the left side and continues the execution. In Monsoon's Frenzy, parries or deflects the incoming attack of his fist, and then follows through in the motion for the rest of the kill. And my two favorite executions of all time had to be Yiru Van Zheng and Keep Trying. Pairing with these with Apollyon's mask effect really makes it pop as they stare into the camera with the mask as they relentlessly humiliate the person you're killing. And Keep Trying feels like the continuation of this, where yet again Tiandi disarms themselves to just again humiliate you. Tiandi as a character has flaws, but those flaws need to exist to keep them in check. If you let up on the damage and buff it, they might end fights too fast, but if you mess their dodge cancels, then they aren't a dodge specialist anymore. If anything, I think Tiandi is in a sweet spot where you have to be content with the bad damage while being really fast and flowy. That's all from me. Thank you so much for watching. I love you guys, and I hope you guys have a great day.